Hi, I'm Pascal, co-founder of Caplena. Today I'd like to talk to you about a very popular subject in machine learning, which is training data. There's a lot of myths and misunderstandings around training data that I want to clear up today. What is training data? Training data is data that is useful for a machine learning model to learn something from. Okay, it's a very general definition. To give you a few examples, we deal obviously with text. So in our case, training data can be, for example, just a simple Wikipedia article or a newspaper article or one online review, for example. This is so-called unlabeled training data. And this is readily available. You can simply scrape, download it. The other kind of training data is labeled training data. This is more structured. For example, a document in English and the same document then in German, which is useful obviously for a translation model. For our case, for example, this will be an online review with the associated topics and sentiments which a human usually would provide. This labeled data is obviously harder to get than this unlabeled data that I mentioned before, just simple text. So now that we understand what training data is, what kinds there are, myth number one. You need a lot of labeled training data to build a useful machine learning model. This myth is simply wrong. It was the case definitely in the early days that you needed a lot of training data. But today, the need has gone down drastically. In the early days, meaning before 2010, what machine learning models did in natural language was basically just word counting. So every word, every new word that appeared needed to have already an example of it in some historical document to understand it. So for example, it would not understand that good and excellent are related words, and you'd have to teach it essentially every word combination to build a useful AI model. Obviously, this is a lot of work, needs a lot of expensive training data. Luckily today, this is no longer needed because we have moved on to so-called word embeddings in the early 2010 years. With word embeddings, you're now able to understand similar words. So for example, good and excellent and fabulous are similar words, so it no longer needs specific examples for each of them, but rather understands already that these are related, and this is knowledge that is already built into the model, and you don't need training data for this. You still need then to get some labeled training data to get the information what this then means. So for example, if good and something similar to price appears, this means the customer thinks that the price is actually good. So fast forward to today. Today we have really powerful transformer models that are able to learn much more than simple word embeddings from text. So nowadays we train our AIs on essentially a dump of the entire internet. So lots of unstructured documents from everywhere. And we use this to distill language knowledge. So just a general form, for example, this service was really expensive and the fees are high, that these sentences are basically meaning something very similar. And there's no need to now sort of get labeled data for these specific sentences. So with these kind of technologies, the need for getting labeled data has drastically gone down from every word combination down to a label per kind of document, per kind of sentence that you have. Myth number two, training data is expensive to get. This is still true, but only for labeled training data. The unlabeled is very cheap. You can essentially download the internet, the text part of it, and get enough training data to train one of yours. And luckily, you don't have to do this yourself. If you use an AI like ours or like an open source model, you'll already have built in this training from a dump of the entire internet. If it's related to your context, it's even better. For example, in our case, we have already tons of customer feedback in there so that it already understands as well this specific context. The labeled training data is expensive, but luckily you need much less of it than before. Myth number three. Training data needs to be from the same context as the data to be analyzed. This is still partially true, but it still benefits if you have training data from the specific context. So for example, if you do a survey on a new product that has not existed before, then it's still helpful if you go in there and do some manual labeling. But for many cases, no longer needed because these powerful AI models were just able to already learn from so many different industries and so many different kinds of surveys that it's no longer needed in many cases to really get context-specific training data. So these were these 3 myths. Let me know if you have more you'd like to have debunked or analyzed. We're going to share more amazing machine learning content in the future in our YouTube channel. Stay tuned.